Welcome to Heart Talk, where we bring you a personal encounter with one of the bishops of the Roman Catholic Church in the United States. Today, we have a heart-to-heart conversation with Bishop Donald Hying of Gary, Indiana. So please join me as we go to meet the bishop. Bishop, it's a real pleasure to be able to spend some time with you. I understand that you are the youngest of 6 boys in your family.
Yeah, that's right. There were 6 of us. My parents had 6 boys in 10 years, so I learned how to eat quickly because you didn't get anything if you waited.
Lots of diapers in that family then, all at the same time. Wow.
I think so.
So as the youngest, what kind of a role did you end up playing?
I don't know. I had a great childhood, that's all I have to say. Wonderful memories of just playing together. We had enough kids just to form our own basketball team or go play baseball, but I had an idyllic childhood.
So did the domestic church that was your family have anything to do with discerning your call to priesthood?
Very much so. I'd say a large part of my vocation really came from my parents.
Really?
In terms of their prayer life, their connection with the church, the beauty of their faith, how they raised us. You know, that God was just kind of a natural part of life. So they didn't force it on us. They just lived their life in such a naturally Catholic way that we just kind of absorbed it. I don't remember ever questioning, do we have to go to Mass or do we have to pray? It just kind of was there.
Yeah. Now, one of the unique features of Catholicism, of course, is our devotion to the mother of the Lord Jesus. He gave her as our mother. He gave us to her as her children. I understand that you have a particular devotion to the Blessed Mother, and especially the Blessed Mother under the title of Our Lady of Fatima. Could you tell us about that?
A large part of that, as I said, came from my parents. My father was born on March 25th, 1917, a Feast of the Annunciation, the year that Fatima happened.
Oh, my.
And once he learned about Fatima, he had a tremendous devotion to Our Lady under that title, prayed to her when he was in World War II, felt that he always protected her. And my mother as well. We prayed the rosary every day after supper, whether we wanted to or not, all the time on beautiful summer nights. But he belonged to the Legion of Mary, and at the end of his life, he was diagnosed with an inoperable chest tumor. And my brothers said, "You're the priest, you can tell him." So I told him that he was given about a month to live, and I was scheduled to go on a pilgrimage to Fatima. So I told him, "I'm not going on this pilgrimage." And he said, "Why not?" And I said, "Because you're probably going to be gone, dead, by the time I come back." So he explained his whole connection to Fatima, and he said, "Don't you think Mary planned it that you would be at Fatima praying for me when I die?"
Oh, my.
So not only can you go, I want you to go, and I'd be upset if you didn't go. So the night before I left, I went to say goodbye to him, and we both just mutually knew that we would not see each other again in this life. And the last thing he said to me was, "If I'm not around when you get back, you'll know where I went." And he started laughing. So he died while I was on this pilgrimage. Yeah. So I was at Fatima praying for him when he died. So he really felt that Mary had walked him through his entire life and prepared him for death. So he would have been 100 years old this year.
My goodness. Yeah, and to think that, I'm sure it gave him a great deal of comfort to know that you were there praying for him.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, we had a great relationship.
Well, here's some very impressive stats about you. I know you would never say this about yourself.
I don't think there's anything impressive about me, actually.
Well, I'm impressed. You're a graduate of the University of Marquette University, where you were a triple major, theology, philosophy, and history.
I did.
You had only one notebook throughout your 4 years there because you're reported to have a photographic memory.
Well, I had one notebook. It was a very thick notebook.
A very thick notebook.
It had a lot of paper in it.
Yeah, but I had a lot of notebooks through college. I can't imagine getting through with one. So when did you first discover that you had this memory ability? Does it serve you in your ministry as a bishop?
Yeah, I don't know if I do. I mean, there's a lot of things I fail to remember that I should be thinking about and know, so I would never say that I do. But I have always loved to read.
Yeah.
So I think reading, absorbing ideas, and kind of digesting all that certainly increases our ability to think and to ponder and to remember. But I think a good memory is obviously a great tool for ministry in terms of remembering people's names, not that I always do. Bringing up ideas and kind of able to call things that people have told you. And, there's just a lot of wisdom in listening, remembering, pondering, bringing all that together. But in college, I was always kind of fascinated by the synergy between theology, philosophy, and history. So you'd be talking about Descartes in a philosophy class, and then he'd come up in a history class, or a question about God in a theology class would emerge as a historical struggle, in some other area. So kind of reminds us that all truth is one. It's one thing.
So as Roman Catholics, many of us have particular devotion to certain saints. I understand you're very close to Thérèse of Lisieux.
Yeah, she'd be one of my favorites. I read her autobiography when I was about 15 and was just taken with her, which is interesting. I mean, she died when she was 24. I didn't do anything great in the eyes of the world, but I think it's really the saint of all the little people, because her little way really speaks of doing little things with great love. Yeah. And there's just something very compelling about the story of her life and just her, radical passion for God, the dark night that she went through, and just kind of reminds us that love always wins in the end. That if you just give yourself to the project of love, and if you trust God, God will do great things in you. So she said, why would God inspire me to be a great saint unless he was also willing to give me the grace for that to be achieved within me? So she really teaches us, loves us, inspires us, that we too can be great in sanctity if we let God have his way with us.
I notice you have about 8 or 9 portraits of her outside your office.
Yeah, that's right. Pray to her all the time. I have amazing stories of her intercession, in moments of trial and challenge.
Early in your priesthood, you spent time as a missionary in the Dominican Republic. Can you tell us what drew you there and what you learned from ministering with the people of the DR?
Yeah, the mission office of the Archdiocese of Milwaukee invited me to go. The Archdiocese of Milwaukee has a sister parish in a town called Sabanajegua near Aswa. It's about a 2-hour drive from the Haitian border on the southern coast. So I went there for a visit. I thought I could deal with the poverty, the heat, the bugs, everything. The one thing I thought that would be extremely difficult is the fact that I didn't know Spanish. And everything that a priest does is communication. You're either listening, speaking, writing, whatever. And I thought, that's just too hard. So I came back determined to say no. The mission office director called and said, she came back, what do you think? And I heard myself saying, yes, I'll go. And it's like, that was the work of the Spirit, because I was firmly determined to say the opposite. So I was blessed to spend about 3.5 years there. When I went, I knew 2 words in Spanish, cerveza and baño, beer and bathroom. I thought that would serve me well through life, right? So I spent the first 3 months in a language study program very intensively in Santo Domingo, and then, went off to the parish. The parish was about 27 villages spread out over about 50 square miles. So it was really like living the Acts of the Apostles. We baptized 2,000 people a year, did the traditional things a parish does, but we also did a lot of social projects, building latrines, teaching people to read. We had a human rights group for land reform. What I learned there is really what every Catholic should learn, and often we can only discover that if we go to a different culture. Mm-hmm. And that is, you realize what the essence of the church is, and you realize the beauty of its multiple cultural forms. So unless you experience the church in another culture, you can often think, well, the church can only be this way. But when you go to another place, you realize, these people have lived a beautiful, different form of Catholicism, united in the faith, but very much enculturated. So you see the beauty of the church's unity in diversity when you can serve and live and breathe in in a different cultural Catholicism.
In a lot of ways, you've lived out Pope John Paul II's mandate to utilize all the forms of modern media to further the new evangelization. Why do you feel invested in utilizing these media, and how are you utilizing them here in your Diocese of Gary?
Yeah, I think, it just goes without saying that the church has always utilized whatever forms of communication that are possible. So when we were children, if somebody had told us that there's going to be this technology where you can create films or video that the whole world can watch, I mean, that's just unthinkable, back when we were kids. And yet, here it is. We can do this. So there's a tremendous potential and reality in social media that allows us to communicate the gospel. So one would be foolish not to use that to the best of our ability. I work with a group called Ahava Productions, and we've made some films called the Anima series, and really exploring the idea of why should one believe in God? Why should one believe in Jesus? Why should one believe in the church? We recently just completed a series called Echo, which was a 36 session video sequence exploring the chapters of the adult catechism of the Catholic Church. Later this month, 35 of us are walking the Camino in Spain.
Are you?
And Ahava Productions is going to create a 60-minute full-length feature film about our experience of the Camino. So all those things,
Are you
really
getting in shape for that?
trying. Yeah, I can lose a few pounds, but I will on the way, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Right.
So sometimes it's the little things that really open a window into who someone is. So one of the little things I learned about you is that when you were a parish priest, you used to call all your parishioners on their birthdays, averaging about 6 or 7 calls a day.
Yeah, I didn't do it every year, but when I did, the results were palpable.
Talk about that.
Because I would just call them, pray that I'd get their answering machine so it wouldn't take long. No, not really. But oftentimes I did. But essentially the message was threefold. I would just wish them a happy birthday, tell them I'm praying for them, thank them for being a member of the parish, and thirdly, is there something I can do for you? Please don't hesitate to ask. Those calls probably made more of a pastoral impact than anything else I did. Yeah. Because it was just a unconditional affirmation of the fact that their presence in the parish was of value to me as pastor. It was just outreach to them at a moment when they're celebrating the gift of life. So I think we all know this, that the impact of little things. Sometimes we think we have to come up with these great massive projects or campaigns to change people's hearts. And oftentimes it's just that little stuff that engages them.
So have you encouraged your priests here to try that?
I've talked about it. I would never mandate it,
Yeah,
but
right.
it's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
It's a great discipline, actually, to do.
So any work that the Lord entrusts to us often involves challenges. Being one of the shepherds, one of the pastors of the church, is a very grave responsibility. What would be one of the challenges that you've encountered as the bishop of this diocese, and how have you relied on your faith and your resources to deal with it?
I think for me, the pastoring part of being a bishop is intuitive and easy. So to celebrate the sacraments, to preach, to confirm, to be out in parishes and schools. I mean, that's just as natural as breathing for me. The administrative part is what's the challenge. And so often, I'm sure every bishop and pastor says the same thing. It's just the challenge of fundraising, the challenge of governance, overseeing the vast structures of a diocese, the priests, the hospitals, the schools, our institutions, our people, our employees. It's a remarkable, vast, multifaceted institution. And so just to rely on good people and to really have good people in place, because you realize you can't do all that alone. But the administration is the challenge, and I think the challenge within that challenge is to see the administration as part of the ministry, so that you stop resenting it as a burden or an obstacle or an interruption, but actually realize that governance and administration is part of ministry as well.
That's right.
So that people can come together for a priest council meeting and we get business done, but ideally also our hearts are somehow transformed in that gathering, or finance council, or whatever it may be. And it's more than just getting the business done. Yeah. It's also, how are we allowing the Lord, even in this seemingly mundane, functional meeting, really to move our hearts and spirits closer to the gospel.
So the church has been through some very difficult times in the past decade. As one of the church's bishops, what gives you hope for the future, for the global church and for your own local church?
Mm-hmm. I sense and see a tremendous ferment in the church right now. I just came back from Florida where we had the National Convocation of Catholic Leaders. It was a unique first time ever event. Over 3,000 laity, priests, religious deacons, bishops come together to really to ponder Pope Francis' encyclical, The Joy of the Gospel, which is all about the new evangelization and creating missionary disciples. So all of us are asking the same questions. How can we have a deeper experience of the Lord? How can we live our faith? How can we give witness to our faith? How can we share with people that are seemingly lost in our culture or disengaged from the church? So what gives me great hope is that statistically we can say, okay, maybe in the United States the church is shrinking. Globally, we're growing. And those that are committed to the church are super committed to the church. So I know many, many young people who really have been touched by the Lord to do great things. So I think there's a Catholic moment in America right now where if we do this right, if we really do this right, God is going to just use the church to bless our nation and bless our world.
That's that's what holds me up, is that assurance that we got, is that I will be with you till the end of time.
Absolutely.
God's never going to walk out on us.
Right. And we know how the story ends, right? We've read the book of Revelation. So.
Yeah. Well, any last word you'd like to share with our listeners about your ministry here?
Oh, just a joy to be here. And I think God puts us exactly where he wants us to be. So I never would have dreamed that I'd be a bishop. I never thought I'd be living in Gary, Indiana. But when we just make ourselves available to the Holy Spirit, God puts us here and then just lets us go with the gifts that we have. So when we do that, great things happen.
Praise God. Well, we thank you for making yourself available to us this afternoon and taking time out of your very busy schedule. May God continue to bless you and all the good work that you're doing here in the Diocese of Gary.
God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for this edition of Heart Talk. We hope you enjoyed our conversation with Bishop Donald Hying of the Diocese of Gary in Indiana. Join us again the next time for another heart-to-heart conversation with one of the church's shepherds. In the meantime, may God richly bless you.
If you have good news, we expect you to want to share it. Salvation in Jesus Christ, the Son of God, who for love of us and for our salvation came down from heaven. Salvation in his name, and he is the only Savior, is what we are on earth for. Therefore, all those who spread the good news of salvation in Jesus Christ, we should encourage them. I can speak, but how many people can I reach alone? But the media, the television people, the radio, the newspapers, and all those who use the computer and its derivatives in various ways to spread the gospel. We must thank them. We must encourage them. We must work with them so that they can continue to spread the good news. There's so much news that is not so wonderful in the world, but there is also news that is wonderful on the gospel of Jesus Christ. We encourage them and beg God to bless them, especially the Shalom World TV. God bless you.
Shalom World, God's own channel.